Welcome back to another session of the PFRPA Podcast, and I have with me today the man, the myth, the legend, Mike Haynes. What's happening, man? How are you?
Hey, everything's good. I'm feeling good.
I have a big question to ask you. I've just been really curious. You had an amazing career, obviously, with the Patriots and the Raiders. Who's your team? Right? I'm going to make you pick one, right?
Well, actually, it depends on where I am when you ask me. Okay?
Smart man.
I've been saying that always. To be totally honest with you, there was a time when I would just say the Raiders.
Yeah.
You know, at that time, they were the winningest team in all of pro sports. That's including the Yankees, the Celtics, the Dodgers, all these other great franchises. It was really the Raiders that had the best. And two things happened. One, Robert Kraft became the owner of the Patriots. Yeah. And he invited a lot of us old guys or former Patriots to come back and attend an event that he had and welcomed us back and said he wanted us to feel like this was home. And with the start of that, I started saying I'm a Patriot again. And he made me feel different about my experience. And other things happened as well. So what a lot of people don't know is I left the Patriots through a lawsuit. You know, I actually said, I don't want to be here anymore. And the owner, Billy Sullivan, who had been a friend of mine after I was drafted, we became not so close. Right. All right. But before Robert Kraft bought the team, actually Billy Sullivan and I had become friends again. And I had to grow up a little bit. You know, I had to realize that pro football was a business. It wasn't necessarily personal. You know what I mean?
Now wait a minute. Now you just blew over this. Hey, well, there was a lawsuit thing. But
yeah.
Folks out there have to remember that you were the very first real free agent, right?
Yeah, but a lot of people won't know because everything's settled out of court. So, you know, what actually happened was there's a trading deadline, and before the trading deadline, Pat Sullivan, who was Billy's son, said he was going to try and trade me, and which is what I wanted. Right. And then he called me, you know, as the deadline elapsed and said, "Gosh, Mike, I'm sorry, we weren't able to work a deal with anybody before the trading deadline." And so I basically tell my wife, "Looks like my career is over because there's no way that I'm going to play for what the Patriots are offering me. There's just no way." And a few minutes later, the phone rings again. It's Al Davis. He says, "Mike, you're a Raider."
You're a Raider.
And I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "I just got thrown with Pat Sullivan. He said that you guys didn't have a deal before the trading deadline." And then he said a couple of words that I can't repeat and just hung up the phone on me, you know? And I was like, wow, what do I do? So I call my attorney, and he says the next day, you know, get on a plane, come out to Los Angeles. And so I did, and we negotiated a contract with the Raiders. I signed the contract. And then the NFL came in and said, hey, that contract's no good. You know, it's null and void. So then I had to sue the National Football League just to get into court to talk about it.
Fun. And
so when we got into court and talked about it, the judge said, hey, you know, I'd like to hear more about this case. Gentlemen, give me a date. Look at your calendars. And then when he set that date, and he said, you know, we were adjourned. And so we walked outside, and the NFL basically said, no way, that's never going to happen. We're not going to go to court, have to open up our books to show everybody that the Patriots really couldn't afford to pay and find out how much money these NFL teams are really making.
Yeah.
So they said, look, you go to the Raiders and we'll work out the details later. And so they got draft choices, and it all happened, but it never really got to court. It was all resolved outside of court. And I went on and had a great career with the Raiders. So it was a good situation, but the story still continues. You know, it still continues. And you know, Billy Sullivan Jr. and I used to play golf together. He'd come out to California and we'd go play golf. So we really did do a lot to try and bury the hatchet. Pat Sullivan also, who was that same general manager. You know, I got a chance to run into him at a Super Bowl because he now is in the business of having these big old trucks that follow the games around, the sporting events around. And he has a bunch of those, and his family's continued to do really well and to stay in sports. But I can't say we're friends, but we're friendly. You know, if I ever saw him or he saw me, you know, we'd be, you know, shaking hands, hugging, and, you know, asking about each other's family. So it's all good.
I feel like, you know, there's going to be a whole new younger generation listening to this podcast. So I feel like I need to educate them just a little bit about who you really are. You were the first real shutdown corner, like the Dion before Dion, right? You were that guy. I mean, it was just a different era because we didn't have the networks and social media and all of this stuff, but you were that guy that changed just that entire defensive back, just the era, how the game's played in the defensive backfield. I mean, you were the guy. What does that mean to you?
Well, for me, I really feel blessed, but I'm really lucky. I actually wanted to play wide receiver. In college, my freshman year was the first year that freshmen could play on the varsity again. They had, I guess, in the 40s and the 50s, you could do it, and there was something that happened, and they thought, hey, let's change the rules so we'll have freshmen playing against other freshmen at other schools. Yeah. But in 1972, they changed it back where freshmen could be on the varsity. And so as a freshman, I got to practice against the varsity, and they moved me up to the varsity team. I was like 6th on the depth chart as a free safety. But I got a chance to take most of the other teams, run the defense of the other team that they were playing.
Right.
And I was having great practices, and I just kept moving up the line, and finally got a chance to get into a game. And I think it was against University of New Mexico. But it might have been Texas El Paso, which is probably who it was. We were a team we were blowing out, and we were so far ahead. They put me in, gave me a chance to play because they thought that the team would be passing the ball to try and catch up. Well, they didn't. They ran the ball instead, right. And I ran up to try and make a tackle. Guy went by me, and I missed the tackle. And Coach Cush said, "Get that kid off of my football field." And so I came to the sideline. I actually thought my college career was over.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. So I sat on the sideline. I was crying, sitting there with a towel over my head, thinking, I should have made that tackle. I had never learned to tackle,
Yeah.
And so I actually learned to tackle after that football season. But anyway, I got a chance to get back in another game, and I got an interception. It was the same situation. They were killing another team, and we knew they were going to be passing, and they did pass, and I got a big interception and almost returned it for a touchdown. And that's where my career started. But when the coaches started saying, we're going to make him a DB, I said, I'm out of here then.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a wide receiver. And so I was going to leave Arizona State, and they found out about it and said, no, please don't leave. You can be receiver. And Danny White was the quarterback. And so I said, okay, I'm coming back. And then when I got back, for some unknown reason, a lot of guys who had been eligible at the end of the season were ineligible the start of the next season. We didn't have very many defensive backs. And they said, Mike, we need you just this 1 year. Well, that was Danny's senior year. So that meant I wasn't going to get to have Danny as my quarterback. And I did not speak to anybody, barely to anyone for a whole season because they put me at defensive back. And instead of playing safety, they put me at corner.
Right.
But I made all conference as a corner. I shut down everybody. It's because I was just so mad,
right?
That I was in that position.
I should have been catching touchdowns.
And then the next year, John Jefferson came, and believe it or not, he's from Dallas, Texas, and Coach Cush said that this is a guy that could go straight from high school to the pros. He doesn't even need college football. He was such a talented guy. And I thought, he's just saying that.
Right.
But then I worked out with the guy, and I agreed. When I catch the ball, you could hear the ball hit my hand. When he caught the ball, you couldn't hear anything. And he would do different things in practice, different drills that he would do them by himself. Nobody else would do them because he'd say, these are the kind of catches you need to make in a game. Right. He'd practice catching with one hand, right hand, and left hand. Nobody else did that. He would dive parallel to the ground and have his arms outstretched. Sometimes just have one arm outstretched.
Right.
Well, my senior year, we beat the University of Arizona. Last game of the year, we were undefeated that year, and John Jefferson caught a touchdown pass, laid out parallel, to the ground with one hand. like me, my hand would have been out towards the ball, but my eyes would be over someplace else,
Yeah.
His were right on the ball. I mean, he was zoned.
Wow.
He was just a true receiver. And so I felt like, maybe it was a good decision. I said, if I'm going to be a defensive back, I'm going to cover this guy every day in practice and work on becoming the best defensive back I can. So
Yeah, I think it paid off.
that started it. Yeah.
I think it paid off.
Yeah.
You ended up being all right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Hall of Fame career. How many Pro Bowls have been in?
Yeah.
You did all right. All right, so tell me about your most favorite football memory. Maybe something that somebody wouldn't know.
Well, I got so many. I mean, my favorite. That's the to say favorite is tough. I have a lot, but some of them. I grew up where my parents always wanted us to be honest,
Right.
and never lie.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as a Patriot player, we were playing Miami in a game that had snow. It snowed during the game. And you couldn't even see the lines of the field. And the game was coming down to, who's going to win this in the last quarter. And we kicked a field goal to take the lead. Well, we had called timeout, and we had the coach instructed the guys who were working on the field to keep the snow off the field to clear a path right down there, like 6 yards or whatever it is, behind the center, whatever it was, during that timeout, which was kind of in a gray area, to do that.
Yeah.
And then we kicked the field goal and took the lead. And then Miami, they never got close enough to do that. And then afterwards, everybody's saying, hey, that was against the rules that you guys cleaned that spot. When we got into the locker room, the coach, who was a guy named Ron Meyer at the time, said, guys, and he was I think it might have been his first year coach, and he was out of college, and I think SMU, and he said, guys, when they come in, they ask you about this, tell them, and he was getting ready to tell us to say some big lie,
Right.
And I said, Coach, hold on. I said, I've never seen them take a victory away from a team, ever. I said, just tell them if Miami got close enough to the goal line, we would have done the same thing for them.
Right. Right.
And he goes, good job, Mike, and so that's what we had decided to do. And Miami, of course, obviously they didn't get down there,
Right.
but kept us honest.
Right.
So that, there's a lot of stories I have in my career like that, and that was a big one. The one that I want to just briefly mention was I had never been to a Super Bowl before. And that was when I was on the Raiders. I actually thought the Patriot players I played with were better than the Raider players.
Yep.
And so I realized it was a mindset that separated the Patriots from the Raiders, just the way they thought. Mm-hmm. And so we're getting ready to play the next day, play Seattle Seahawks in the AFC Championship game. And I can't wait for Coach Flores' speech. This is going to be the highlight of my career,
Right.
It's the first time I've ever played an AFC Championship game. And so I can't wait. And so he calls us all up, and he says, well, fellas, big game tomorrow. You guys, we play in a lot of big games. See you at the hotel at 6. That's it.
Wow.
And I thought, that's it? And then as I got older and wiser, I realized that was probably the wisest thing that he could have done, because of guys like me who have never played in one. I would have probably lost sleep if he would have said, you've waited your whole career for this and all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't have been able to sleep. But he was right. This is just, look at it as just another game. And just go out there and do your job.
Right.
And that's another memorable moment because and when you watch all the movies, the coach was always giving a huge speech. Right. But we know now from sports and all the great sporting events that you try to remove as much pressure and stress as a coach. That's what you want to try and do for your players, and that's what Coach Flores was able to do, which has helped me in my life in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I felt that way a lot about Tom Coughlin. Now, everybody knows Tom Coughlin was extremely tough, but one of the things, he wasn't that big rah-rah guy either, but you knew there was just always a high level of expectation. So whether we were playing in the AFC Championship game, which we did, or we were playing regular season, you were expected to show up and give everything you had always, right? So, yeah, I totally get that. All right, so but playing for the Patriots, you've obviously played in a lot of cold football games. Matter of fact, the coldest I've ever played in was playing the Patriots. But what's the coldest football game you've ever played in?
I might have been against the Giants. And to be honest with you, it was at the end of my career with the Raiders, and I wasn't starting anymore. This was almost you could say it was my last game, you know. I don't know if I would have felt the same way if I had played for 4 quarters. You know, I was standing on the sideline, and they say, "Haynes, get in there." What? It's fourth quarter. How do you,
right?
you know? And I had a new appreciation for those guys that come off the bench, and you know, in a crucial situation when they have to make a play. And I remember, is it Sims? Was it?
Phil Sims.
So he, it's a passing play. That's why I'm in, but he decides to run to get the first. You know, and I'm running up and going, "Oh, this is gonna hurt," right? You know, and I think it did hurt. He, you know, I don't even think I brought him down. I hit him, you know, but I didn't have enough behind me.
Oh, you didn't want to hit the ground when it's cold, right? That's always
so
worse.
It was hard. Yeah, that was not a lot of fun. Yeah.
So, what's the hardest you've ever been hit? You're welcome to the NFL hit.
I actually don't really think I have one. I think I really avoided super hard hits.
Smart.
Yeah.
He was too fast to be hit that hard.
Well, I was just too smart. I mean,
right.
You know, I guess one particular short yardage situation when I was on the Raiders against the Chargers, and I think this running back, his last name was Buford. He was a big guy, probably like 240 or 50, you know, fullback, and short yardage situation. And I used to, you know, like most of the corners, they took him out on short yardage. Right. But I always like staying in the game, you know, just in case they throw it. You know, I want to be there. Right. And they ran a play my side of the field, and I came up and took on the fullback, you know, behind the line of scrimmage, which I like to do to try and force the ball carrier to try and go wide outside, and I would make a tackle, which would end up being a loss on the play. But when he hit my shoulder, I felt like my shoulder fell off. You know, I felt like somebody shot me from the stands, you know. And right after that play, I looked to the sideline, like, you know, because
it's like you got sniped.
I was like, hey, I need somebody in here for me. You know, it was pretty embarrassing, but that hurt. I'd never been hit that hard before.
Yeah, I had one very similar. It was, remember Greg Lloyd played for the Steelers?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, he caught me just unaware one game.
Yeah.
I think it was the interception was thrown, and, boy, he just tagged me.
Well, that's not fair.
I just remembered feeling like I got sniped from the upper deck.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, you know, those kinds of hits where you don't see the guy coming, you know, and like you're chasing, you're going as fast as you can, and a guy blindsides you. Yeah, that's why I never would let that happen to me. My head was always on a swivel. That's why I missed those.
You know, everybody's looking for that big, slow offensive lineman during the interception.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, so your transition from college football, Arizona State, playing for the Patriots, when did it first dawn on you that, hey, I'm in the NFL now?
To be totally honest, it was in the preseason, the first preseason. First is I can say with the draft and then having my first few practices with the Patriots, you know, like they bring the rookies back and we're all out there. I was out there. I was there to show off. I was there to show why I got drafted in the first round. And I had a couple of great days of practice. But what I also realized is that I realized later that I had been training for that. Yeah. And those veterans had not been training for it. But when we went to training camp, they put the ball on the 6-yard line. Every single receiver on the Patriots offense beat me for a touchdown. Every single one. From the little short guy who was a great wide receiver, Randy Vataha, beat me for a touchdown. Tallest guy was a guy named Steve Burks, about like 6'3", not super fast, but long. He was long arms and strong. Beat me for a touchdown. Darryl Stingley beat me for every single one of them. And so my ego was, you know, after the second one is like, let me go again. Let me go again. You know, I'm pushing the guys back. I got it. I'm going again. And at the end of that segment, I took my helmet off and threw it on the ground. The inners of my helmet busted out, you know, and I was pissed at the world. I was so mad. And Coach Fairbanks came over and he said, Mike, that might be the best thing that ever happened in your career. He says, I'm glad it happened here. He said, this is the National Football League. You're going up against the best of the best. You can't look at how tall the guy is. You can't look at how fast the guy is. Right. If he's here because there's not a lot of people in the country that are as good as him. And I realized that. So, I could not judge the book by the cover. I had to take each one of these guys, at face that guy can beat me. And so I started to work right then and there, prepare, didn't matter who I was going up against, didn't matter what size he was or how fast he was, he had the ability to beat me. And that's the way I prepared every practice after that, and for every game. And one of the reasons I believe I had the kind of career I did.
Right. That's incredible. So imagine this scenario. Mike Haynes today is able to talk to a young 21, 22-year-old rookie with the Patriots, Mike Haynes. What do you tell your younger self? Piece of advice.
To a guy coming in the National Football League?
What do you tell your younger self?
Oh, to my younger self, me.
Yeah.
You're going to live a long time.
you just said on that, right?
Yeah. You're going to live a long time. And this career that you have in the National Football League, I don't care if it's 1 year or 14 years. You got a lot of life left to live. Yeah. And so when you're in your 30s, don't feel like you're getting old, because you still have another 3/4 of your life to live, Right. And so make your decisions, try to design, a plan, a lifestyle that's going to work for you. Don't feel like, wow, I've been in the league for 7 or 8 years, I'm getting old and all that, and I need to start doing this or that. Brother, you are still young. So find out what you're passionate about and work really hard to get that done, because that's going to help you, propel you, during your career and after. And I think, those kinds of things is what I would, tell a young Mike Haynes. And don't just think about yourself. It's not like, hey, I'm making a lot of money for me and my family. Try to think about your grandkids and start putting money away for them. Because if you live to be 65 years old, you're going to have kids, and your kids are going to have kids. Do you want your kids to have to play football to get a college education? Yeah, Wouldn't it be nice if you can say, hey, son, I hope you're smart enough to go to some of the country's best schools. I want you to, be a good student. Don't worry about it. If you can get in, I can pay for it. You don't have to be a 4.4 or, big leaper or whatever. And, those kinds of things. I think those are all important. And I've learned that the hard way, because I didn't do a lot of things that we're talking about. But I have lived a large part of my life as an adult helping football players, help them make better decisions. And got a lot of experience, being around football, and I can pass that on as well.
So you have left this tremendous impact on the game and on players, not only through your play on the field, but through your mentorship and the guys that you've worked with. And now we get to the Pro Football Retired Players Association and an opportunity, a shot, a chance to do something so unique in uniting retired football players for their benefit. What does being a board member of the PFRPA mean to you?
What it means to me is, and we've been talking about this here as a group for a long time, about, the future player, the past player, and the current player. And from my experience, I've learned, as I've said earlier, is that I'm going to live a long time. What age should a kid start playing football? Being on the board has made me think about that. How should you view injuries? Because I've had a lot of guys whose careers ended because of injury. What kinds of things could guys do when their careers are over that might help those young kids who haven't even started playing yet? What kind of things can football contribute to a community and make a community better? I've had to think about those kinds of things. And is making money what life is all about? I've had to think about that as well. And would life be better if the guys who played the game stayed close to the game and brought their intelligence and their experience into different things that players are exposed to? I had a great job at the National Football League, and my job was to help guys transition out of college into pro football and then out of pro football back into normal life. Nobody came into my office, hardly anyone came into my office, I should say, that played football. They were brilliant guys from the financial markets, brilliant guys from broadcast, brilliant guys from health organizations. Right. And I would say, hey, do you have anybody in your staff that played football? Can some of those guys come in here and talk to me? And then I started realizing that why is it that football players are not in these roles? Why aren't they even pursuing these roles? And so I think trying to have these companies who are trying to have a more diverse workforce and trying to say, hey, we want to get some football players over here. We want to help you guys. I said, I think it'd be much easier if you had a player coming in here talking to me about this, a player helping a player. I think that you'd have my attention, and I would absolutely know that the guy who I'm talking to would be able to say the right things to communicate, successfully and correctly with my guys, and we'd have a good outcome. So, being on the board has exposed me to a lot of different challenges, but it's also given me an opportunity to think about things I've gone through that I might be able to help our board make good decisions about. It's also gotten me to look at the older guys and the younger guys. From the oldest guys, and we lose a lot of guys every year. And I was at a meeting in Las Vegas, and I could not believe how many guys died in a year. Yeah. It was like over 100 guys
every year.
And that blew me away. And then when you ask, I wonder what those guys did for a living and what was their lifestyle, and gosh, is there anything that we could have done to try and change that? A lot of these guys have gone to great colleges. Their colleges when they were in school were the top football programs in the country. Did those guys transition out of football, out of pro football, or out of college football? Great. Did they have a great transition? Or did they go through a depression? Are we having the same issues? Or when a guy stops playing high school football, is he depressed because he can't play football anymore? Yeah. Probably. Yeah. When a guy goes to college and he can't play in the pros, is he depressed? Probably.
Every stage.
And so as a transition coach, when I'm talking to new guys, every year is like 250 guys that leave the league. When I talk to them, I say, guys, yeah, I'm a Hall of Famer, but guess what we all have in common? We were waived. We were cut.
That's right. All ends,
someone
brother.
Knocked on that door and said, bring your playbook.
That's right.
And I said, so we all have that in common. And some of us are more ready for that than others. But if we really work hard and work together, it doesn't have to be a tough transition. Guys can be thinking about it early on, and it can be a smooth transition. And they can be great in their communities and doing positive things. And it's a win-win for everybody.
Unbelievable words of wisdom to pass on, and just why we're here, right? To have your voice heard. What an honor it is here to just talk to you today and hang out with you. Have such huge respect for you as a player, as a businessman, and all the things you've done off the field. It's just an absolute pleasure. Thanks for hanging out with me for a bit.
Are you kidding? You're a Pro Bowler off the field, man.
There you go. Right off the field. There you go.
I enjoyed it just as much as you did.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.